All right, good afternoon, everyone. I would request everybody to please take their seats and put their mobiles on silent. All right, thank you, everyone. To get us started, I'm going to invite Aniket Doigar, founder and CEO of Haqdarshak, to give us his opening remarks and get us started for this session.
Thank you, Shweta. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this India AI Impact Summit event. Open networks in the Global South with AI as an enabler. On behalf of Haqdarshak and the India AI mission, I want to welcome all the attending dignitaries and our esteemed speakers and all participants for being here today with us. At Haqdarshak, we work at the very last mile of the digital economy, where access determines the outcomes. Every day, our network of women agents help marginalized citizens discover, apply for, and receive welfare benefits. And what we see repeatedly is that access is just not about availability, it's about trust and agency. This is why the idea of open networks resonates so deeply with us at Haqdarshak. Open networks shift power away from closed networks and towards shared infrastructure. They allow multiple actors, governments, startups, community entrepreneurs to participate on equal terms. In our work, this means that a citizen is not locked into a single system, but can move across seamlessly with dignity and choice. Digital public infrastructure in India like UPI, Aadhaar, and ONDC have shown what is possible. Interoperability has shown that it replaces exclusivity. But technology alone is not enough. What matters also is trust. As an example, the work we do with the Center for Inclusive Growth in MasterCard with women entrepreneurs and MSMEs. So there has to be a layer of open networks plus a strong layer of trust in the platforms that citizens can easily access. As we've been hearing in the last few days, that apart from AI models, what is really important is also AI diffusion and how important it is to take these models and networks to the last mile. So today's session, we'll explore exactly these questions: how open networks can scale responsibly, how AI can enable inclusion without centralizing power, and how ecosystems across the Global South can learn from each other. And to begin, I'm pleased to invite to the stage our keynote speaker, Mr. T. Koshi. T. Koshi is the founding MD and CEO of ONDC, a first-of-its-kind initiative to democratize e-commerce in India. He's an expert in population-scale digital transformation projects worldwide, and we are also honored that he is a board advisor at Haqdarshak.
Thank you and good afternoon. We know open network democratizes commerce, and artificial intelligence gives us an opportunity to democratize intelligence. And two of them together can really tango to change the world. And I believe that the AI Summit is all about this. Let me just see a little context, because we have eminent speakers here who are experts on networks and protocols and everything, who will discuss things more. If you look at historically, if you look at technology revolution brought about industrial revolution. And that industrial revolution changed the landscape of the world around. But there was one challenge. The leading figures in this tech upgrade practically weaponized this technology and used it to conquer and colonize the world. Of course, there were new infrastructure, new innovation, variety of fields like defense, travel, textile, everywhere. But the challenge was mostly it was meant for the benefit of the conquerors. Sort of what we call, this philosophy that was dealt by the early colonizers, of many parts of the world. The challenge was, this was not inclusive at all. The digital continent that now we are creating also faces the same challenge. It started with a spirit of democratic participation, encouraging competition and inclusion. But eventually it started creating silos, especially when it comes to the newer areas of commerce and so on and so forth. We in India figured out digital public infrastructure as a solution to reverse this trend, make it more inclusive and democratic. When we talk about DPI, my guide in DPI, Sujit here, tells me it's all about two foundational elements that stand out: unbundling and interoperability. That is driving innovation and competition. Now, like we said, the possible democratization of intelligence with AI can turbocharge every of this building block of economic activity. This will attempt to improve the life of every citizen and not a select few. I mean, that is the message, as Nandan said in the morning and Aniket referred now, it's about the diffusion. For Global South, it becomes even more challenging because we have a scale that has to take into context the diversity on one side and resource crunch on the other, which may not be the kind of challenges faced by the developed world. The real question becomes not whether we can scale fast or build smart system, but who benefits, who controls the system, and who gets left out. That becomes a very, very critical challenge. Open networks emerge precisely to address this tension. This is not a technical option, but it's a governance choice. A choice which can separate infrastructure from innovation, protocols from platforms, and power from participation. Let me take a couple of minutes to sort of share the lessons that we had when we were setting up ONDC in that 4 years ago. So India's experience with UPI and ONDC shows something very, very important. Networks do not replace markets. It re-architect markets. By creating common interoperable rails, they reduce entry barriers specifically for the small business. They enable competition without fragmentation, and they allow innovation that happens at the edges, not just at the center. In ONDC's case, the goal was not to build another platform, but to ensure commerce itself will become a shared capability. This required three things: governance, which is neutral and transparent; ecosystem collaboration between government, industry, and startups, and civil society, because it's about a social transformation from somebody with $1 a month income, sometimes as bad as that, to 1 billion in a year. I mean, I can't count. Ecosystem collaboration between government, industry, startups, and civil society. And a lot of patience, because this is not a magic where somebody can come a magic wand and things will change. Everybody in the ecosystem will need to work together. Now we are seeing that a new phase of internet, not just as a network of information, but as a network of transaction. This internet of transactions will be interoperable, inclusive, iterative, because it's evolving. It has to evolve with the feedback and experimentation, and built on the infrastructure of digital public infrastructure, not on silos. It will offer choice without coercion, scale without centralization, and innovation without inhibition. The digital continent that we dream is not a metaphor, it's a blueprint. It is a call to reimagine digital ecosystem as open, federated, and inclusive. And it is here that we have to be conscious that it is not just something an India phenomena. It's something that is now taking global proportions, and with many countries already taking many steps to take it forward. In fact, we have somebody from Indonesia who is talking about what is the first step in the ASEAN, with Indonesia as a starting point. In all this thing, AI is an enabler. That is what we need to make it happen. It has to act as, it cannot act as a gatekeeper. That was one of the challenges, some of the new technologies. It became gatekeepers to create silos. Now AI brings enormous opportunity. We have to be aware of the opportunity in terms of enhanced market access for merchants of all hues, not just for a select few. Better discovery for consumers, same thing. The consumer, a farmer consumer coming from a small village, should have something meaningful to benefit from this network where practically very diverse kinds of options are available. And that is when we will have to have a smarter matching between the buyers and seller. And it also has to have an inbuilt mechanism of confidence building. The question is not whether but at the same time, it also has a risk if you're not careful, that it can possibly lead to concentration like we saw somewhere. So the question is not whether AI should be used, it should be absolutely used. The question is how it is embedded. So we need to think carefully about where intelligence is. Is it only at the edge and only at the core, or it's also at the edges? Is it only helping the user intermediaries primarily, or it is with the users, or it is helping every users? And whether it is governed by rules and not rules which is applicable to the community as a whole, not just a select few. So this open network gives us a chance to enable markets in a big way. And where it also has a very important role to play in terms of governance. Why does it all matter? Because open network fundamentally change who can participate in the digital economy. I want to just sort of wind up and give the opportunity for my fellow panelists to speak and discuss. But looking ahead, we see successful open network in the global south will not be defined by the number of transactions or by the sophistication of AI model, but it is going to be defined by diversity of participation, resilience in governance, fair distribution of value, and the ability to innovate without concentration of power. This is not an easy work. And this is the idea I hope that my colleagues will now discuss about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Koshi sir, for your insightful comments. You've, I think, set the stage perfectly for our panel discussion. So in today's panel discussion, we'll explore how open networks are transforming the digital economies of the global south and how interoperable DPIs are creating inclusive payments, inclusive commerce, and also innovation for small merchants. And we will also focus on the future trajectory of open networks, especially in the global south, to see how we can embed AI systems in open architecture. So I'll invite our panelists to come on stage and take a seat. Sujit Nair, CEO Beacon Labs and co-founder of Networks for Humanity. Shamina Singh, founder and president of MasterCard Center for Inclusive Growth and executive vice president of sustainability at MasterCard. And Sachin Gopalan, founder and CEO of Indonesia Economic Forum. And our moderator for today is Savita Mule, CTO at Hugdarshak.
Just move one so they'll be more centered.
All right. We have a fantastic panel. We had a great keynote to set us for this conversation. So I hope all of you are excited about the conversation we're going to have. We're going to talk about open networks, which are rapidly emerging as a new foundation for digital economies across the global south. India has set an example, and we're seeing diffusion across other countries as well. From interoperable payments to open commerce, these networks are reshaping how markets function by changing who gets access, who participates, and who benefits. As we stand, we are also at a very interesting point because February also saw a lot of activities with the launch of Bharat Vistar, the Mahavistar in Maharashtra, which are agri-networks, and also the Indonesia Open Network for commerce in Indonesia. Over the next 40 minutes, we invite you to think about open networks not just as technology platforms, but as shared economic infrastructure, and also about how AI, if designed responsibly, and like Koshi sir was saying, responsibly and inclusively, how can it strengthen their impact across the global south? I want to start off with a quick, initial first response, first reaction, lightning question to each of you. What excites you most about open networks, and where do you see AI already making a real difference? I'll invite Sujit to start off.
Open networks fundamentally put people in the center, people, businesses in the center, and enables choice and agency to them. Okay, and make their opportunities discoverable, offer opportunities, make farmers find market linkages faster. Yesterday we were doing a farmer was doing a peer-to-peer energy transaction from his rooftop solar where a little bit of excess energy, he was selling to a woman tailor in Delhi from Uttar Pradesh in Meerut. And that's something that we're doing as part of the India Energy Stack. So these possibilities are exciting because it's fundamentally about putting people in the center. And AI, we are able to use open networks as a way to diffuse AI faster, because when all the talk about AI has been mostly on the supply side, and the bigger models are getting and all of that. But I think India is all about diffusion. And if you're talking about diffusion, we need open rails to actually go AI to the edges, as Koshi was mentioning. And that part, I think OpenNet is very excited. Yesterday, we had a farmer in 3 voice notes on WhatsApp do energy transaction, sell 300 quintals of onion from Uttar Pradesh to West Bengal, all because of the agent. Because AI hides the complexity of what could be gory details of energy trading, but fundamentally puts him in the center and solve for livelihoods and income gains. So that's what I'm excited about. Thank you.
Fantastic. Shamina, your thoughts?
Thanks for having me. Just in terms of the lightning round, I think what's really exciting is I think the opportunity for open networks makes us think about who gets access, not necessarily how. And that's a really important question building on your point, Sujit. The opportunity to lower the barriers to access to commerce is massive with open networks. So for me, I think it's about who gets access. And I think in terms of the AI, we actually had a small pilot with an organization called Mandeshi Bank. Some of you may know Mandeshi. They have the Rural Women Chamber of Commerce, and we've supported them for many years. We put a small pilot of those women on the open network, and it was quite interesting to see. I was quite skeptical, but it was very interesting to see that these small business owners went from a very closed circle of who they could do business with to an entirely new market, and we saw their businesses grow in almost real time. So we've seen it in action. That's what's exciting.
Fantastic. Sachin, your thoughts?
Thank you. And first of all, good afternoon to all of you. And I'm really pleased to be here today. And thanks to Haq Darshak for inviting us. This dog whistle that people have always been talking about, that AI is going to take away your jobs, AI is going to change your life, etc. What interests me about this whole opportunity is that I believe AI will unleash human potential. And I think that's a very powerful word. How do you unleash human potential? Is by harnessing it. And if you're able to embrace the power of AI and also the combination of open networks, taking it to the lowest common denominator, the person sitting in a village, in a remote area, I think that's the depth or the reach we should think about. A remote village, a small farmer and his children staying there, how are they impacted? And how can this entire technology of AI, open networks, unleash human potential? That excites me a lot. So I feel that we are on this journey, and working together will get us there. If not 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, it's inevitable. There's no way we can ignore what's happening, and I'm very excited that I could be part of this journey. So that's why I'm here. Thank you.
Fantastic. Just to summarize, each of you talked about, democratizing access, who gets access instead of how, and unleashing human potential. And fundamentally, humans interact on the basis of trust. So I'd like to put the first question to Sujit. Sujit, open networks, they depend heavily on trust for establishing identity, establishing data sharing and verification. With AI in the mix, how do you see AI either enabling, amplifying, or impacting the trust equation when people access and interact through open network in this AI-enabled? You mentioned agentic AI at the core to hide the complexity for humans who are accessing the networks. What role do you see AI playing in the trust equation there?
Yes. So fundamentally, if you think about AI is all about data more than algorithms. So one of the things that we do with open networks and DPI in general is to unlock the data of the people and give it back to them in a way that's trustable, verifiable, tamper-proof, and something that they can feed into these AI systems to give them find what they need to find, identifying who they are and making them find what they do. I'll just give you an example. I don't know if this is happening in any other country, but in India, today if you're a consumer of electricity, very soon you will be getting your energy connection and your energy usage data as a verifiable credential back to the consumer that they can keep verified by the utility and in an interoperable standard, and you can make it available to any third-party platform offering some kind of using that information as some form of a collateral for a cheaper credit or for participating in excess, the excess energy in trading. We're seeing that with farmers, farmer credentials, farmer identities being credentialized, tokenized in a tamper-proof and making available. Once you have this exhaust of data coming in at the edges for the people, and you're making it trustable and verifiable at scale, the value of AI for that beneficiary significantly improves. Because everything else is the complexity of how do you make that data reach the systems and talk to them and find the best price, do the optimization of where the warehouse is, or even for a trader to locate what could be the best logistic player out there to serve maybe in far-flung of the country. All of this is something that AI can do faster, cheaper, better, without business having to take the cognitive load on it. So once you unleash this data, which is what DPI does, it emits the data, gives it back to the user, makes it verifiable and trustable, and that enhances the value of AI. And therefore, it makes it easier for AI to offer value back to the end user.
Absolutely, absolutely. Shamina, coming to you, we've seen in the payment space and in commerce as well how open networks have, and the interoperable infrastructure has helped scale inclusion rapidly, right? As we think about global financial inclusion and lowering barriers for entry, what principles do you feel open networks should follow to make sure that AI-driven innovation is not reintroducing exclusion, because now there is either a digital divide or there is a education divide, awareness divide? What could be considerations that need to be kept in mind when people are building around these networks?
It's a great question. And the benefit of working for a multinational in this regard is that the exposure that we've had to lessons from around the world. So as an example, the company that I work for, MasterCard, operates in over 200 markets, 3 billion cardholders, 25 million banks and financial service providers. So the scale is massive. When AI, we're hearing a lot about AI now, but actually the company has been using AI for many years because we had to figure out how to protect transactions in an age of data. So you said AI is algorithms and data, but it's really data, right, at the end of the day. And so before regulation, almost probably 10 years ago, we had to come up with a way of thinking about data. And that's a really important thing, because the way a company or an organization thinks about data determines how your products are made and how people are treated. So for us, even before it was regulation, we said, listen, for our company at least, because we had made a commitment to bring 1 billion people into the formal economy 11 years ago, the data for us would be from the perspective of the consumer, saying the consumer should own the data, the consumer should benefit from the data, but it's MasterCard's job to protect the data. So if you look at it from that perspective, then you understand that our approach is about, of course, reducing the barrier to entry through open networks. But the interesting thing that I find is that the centers model is actually built on a theory that networks power the modern economy, and so extending the networks to all parts of society is actually the trick. And so if you have the right approach around the data principles, and then you have the right approach around how you think about networks, which are extensions out into the edges, and then you bring in this notion of interoperability, proportional governance, so that you don't re-exclude, but you actually diffuse the data and the technology. But then you have this this piece around contextual adaptation. And for me, that's the piece that makes the difference for what's happening potentially, what's happening in India and potentially in Indonesia is the context around all of this. I was at a meeting this morning, I had a breakfast meeting this morning with the Minister for Railways and the Digital Economy. We were talking about this, and we talked about Manav, because India announced the Manav protocol today at the summit. And I was talking about the A in Manav around accessibility. And you know, we were comparing notes to say that it's really making sure that, you know, partnerships like the ones that we have with Hagdarshak and also with Garia that are like, they're creating language learning models from the ground up. Like the minister was talking about creating language learning models organic to India. And that was a big piece for him. He was saying, we have to create them here, we have to build them here by Indians for Indians. And I said, you know, there's a really great example because you have this organization called Garia that's actually building language learning models using farmers and women. And they have 130,000 people right now across the country who are speaking languages into these learning models that would never have access in the US or anywhere else. So I went to visit Garia in Bangalore, and we heard about the languages there and talk to the workers. And it's astounding to me that this organization and this country has actually flipped the model in a way that allows workers to get paid reasonable wages and work with dignity. And for me, that's the context that we have to think about AI. AI is super cool and all of that from the tech bro side, but at the end of the day, AI has to be about benefiting humanity and treating people with dignity. And that's what's really exciting to me about what I'm seeing here.
Thank you, Shamina. That's a great perspective, and very also interesting to see a global, you know, perspective on how you're seeing use of AI in different contexts and in your work at the center as well. Sachin, thinking at an ASEAN, it is at an inflection point with especially the Indonesia Open Network recently being launched. What lesson from implementations in India, what considerations local to, you know, each country in ASEAN do you see relevant to implementations in Indonesia, and how do you balance innovation with openness, with local considerations on data protection and national data sovereignty? If you could share your thoughts, yeah.
Thank you. You know, I'd like you to give a little bit of thought to if you were to take a project like ONDC, which is a very successful implementation of open commerce in India, and if you were to take it to another country, what would you do? No, just give some thought to what would you do to bring something like that to another place, which is completely different. People, culture is different, habits are different, you know, the way they use media is different. So the answer lies in, it's not that ONDC is coming to Indonesia. We in Indonesia looked at what can we get from India on the back of, you know, Prime Minister Modi and President Prabowo signed a MOU for digital cooperation in 2025 January when President Prabowo was here as the chief guest of the Republic Day. And 3 months into that, a lot of people, including me and the Indian ambassador, started thinking, what is it that we can bring from India that is of value to Indonesia and to ASEAN? So it started from that side looking here, right? It's not that India looked at putting the product out there. Now in that came this whole idea of there is a pioneering concept, ONDC, and it comes with all the use cases, some successes, some challenges, some opportunities, and we had to sit and map what we could bring from ONDC into Indonesia in the context of what's happening there. And the problems are all the same. You know, we have 65 million MSMEs, we have 300 million population. The youth are disenfranchised from jobs because jobs are getting more difficult. Social problems will result because if we don't unlock opportunities for the youth, you're looking at, failed democracies. And that's actually where the world is heading today. So some of us working with the Indonesian government felt it is imperative we bring something that's a game changer, something that will really change the way that the digital DNA or the economic DNA of Indonesia should be able to change. It has to be something of significance. It can't just be, let's bring this tech here, let's bring that product here. It has to have a social impact so large that it is something that can be made into a movement. And there was only one such program that brought it to the people, and that's ONDC. So we looked at, and then I contacted, Koshi and, all the people who created ONDC. Sujit, I'm in good company here today, right? And we realized that the starting point actually is plugging ONDC and open network ideology into what's already happening in Indonesia. So Indonesia has about 35 to 40% of the population already in some form of digital action. Whether they're taking payments or, at the very simple instances, they use QR code like our UPI in India. There's QRIS, which is the product equivalent there. And payments is leading the way. The easiest thing to do, right? You do digital payments and then you're already halfway there. But moving product in a country like Indonesia, which is an archipelago, 17,000 islands, moving product from a remote village in one end to the other end means logistic networks need to be interoperable. There's no way any one logistic company can be the biggest network in the country. So, that the problems or the friction points in Indonesia naturally pointed out towards interoperability, inclusivity, democratization. So it came from a need rather than looking at, being social crusaders. It's not that we want to be a social crusader and therefore let's bring it to the people. No, the friction points Indonesia faces can only be solved by something like an ONDC. So that was a revelation actually for us. So we looked at what is it that we can really plug into, and I'll keep this short. Government programs we mapped. There are 17,500 traditional markets. They're wanting to be digitalized. Each market gives you 500 to 600 sellers. So now we are making a plan. Let's take this and plug it into the traditional markets across the nation. Then there are 80,000 cooperatives in Indonesia. Every village has a cooperative which brings the farmer, the fisherman together. And the president has a program for digitizing them. What better application to give them than an open network, right? Because now, not only have you gone to 80,000 villages and created a small ecosystem of digital commerce, but you interconnected them into clusters and then they become a nationwide network. Then there are 65 million MSMEs who are sellers, selling all kinds of products, facing huge challenges by Chinese product dumping that's taking place. Now, how do you revive manufacturing in Indonesia at an MSME level and make their products get a bigger, larger market across regions, right? So, these friction points and the problem statements automatically pointed out that there is only one way to go, and that is having open network and embrace a model that has been done somewhere, learn from what is the best of ONDC, and use the best of ONDC and plug it into programs of the Indonesian government's existing programs. So it's a very simple start. I think it's more practical that way. We'll learn as we go along and how more complex we can be. And this model, mind you, I think, Sujit, who did Beacon 1.0 for India, is now developed Beacon 2.0. And Indonesia is going to be the first country to implement Beacon 2.0, which means the copy-paste model for open commerce could probably come from Indonesia, then going to the rest of ASEAN, which is 10 countries, and then other parts of the world. You can look at something which is a hybrid evolution of what India has done, which is pioneering, and what Indonesia is doing, which is accelerating. So I think that's the route we would like. I would very much be happy to get the opportunity to travel the world once we have completed Indonesia's implementation in about a year. And I think that's a way forward for all of us to collaborate. Thank you.
Fantastic. Pioneering to accelerating. That's amazing way
Yeah.
to put it. I just want to take a step back and look at what open networks, especially in the commerce space, did, right? They lowered the cost of transacting, they lowered the cost of entering into the market. Shamina, as AI becomes more embedded, AI itself is a costly technology. There's going to be cost of accessing and using AI. When people are building and deploying open networks. Now, Indonesia is another country. How should sustainability and monetization be approached so that these systems remain open and trusted, but also financially viable?
Yeah, again, it's a great question because as somebody who leads the philanthropy and the sustainability for MasterCard, I also know the limits of philanthropy, and grants can only go so far. So the way we approach it is we call it commercially sustainable social impact, meaning profit is actually part of the equation. And philanthropy is part of the capital stack. So these programs have to generate livelihood, and why not? Like, that's the whole purpose of these things. But let me take a step back and sort of give a little bit of context for my friend from Indonesia, in that what makes me excited about hearing this program from you. Because we have been convening as part of ASEAN, we have an inclusive growth summit that we bring to the region. And the reason why we came to ASEAN last year at KL, we're going back to Manila, and then we'll go to Singapore the year after that, is because what we have seen in this region, but partially driven by ASEAN, is that 1 billion people have joined the middle class over the last 10 years. 1 billion more are going to be joining the middle class over the next 10. Can you imagine what that means for consumption and what that means for ONDC, what it means for open markets? Like, just think about that. These are people that are going from $4 and $5 a day to $14 and $15 a day. These are not like 50,000 or anything. Like, just going from $4 a day to $14 a day transforms the entire life of a family, of a generation, and a community, and a country. So if you look all the way up, this is what's happening right now. So from the outside in, so as I sit, in the US or I sit anywhere else, that's how these markets are being viewed. The engine of growth is coming from here. The question we're asking ourselves, I think, in this conversation and in many conversations is, will this growth be inclusive, or will we exacerbate the divides we've seen in the West? The opportunity with the Indonesia model, with the India model, with the open markets model, and the open platform model is to build from the inside out with inclusion at the core. And I think that's why commercially sustainable inclusion is a reality. These things are not exclusive. So we call it doing well by doing good, meaning your business strategy actually depends on an improved outcome for the people that you're trying to serve. So I think that is sort of the thing that I would promote. And then the last thing I'd say about this, as you build out the ONDC model and 2.0, Beckon 2.0, one of the things that we learned with our partnership with microfinance organizations around the world, we made a $15 million investment in a global microfinance platform, is that once you get these open source platforms built, you can actually start lending on the platform in itself. Because what you're seeing, you're seeing small businesses transact in real time. So you can also see that they're good for the loans. That's the other thing we've seen, is that in places when sometimes it's hard for banks to lend to small business owners, when you build these ONDC platforms, the opportunity for small businesses to actually borrow in real time becomes real because the contracts are actually happening. You can see them. So procuring from one location in Jakarta to an island in another part of Indonesia is very interesting because you can see that the businesses are actually creating contracts with each other. So the opportunity to extend the network, but also to extend credit, to extend affordability, to extend commerce. These are the things that are, from a 30,000 foot perspective, are really making the world look at these places in a different way.
That's so interesting. So not just viability and financial sustainability of the networks and the platforms, but also people who are benefiting, right? So does the user find a livelihood? Does the user find better ways to earn income, better ways to access credit, like you said? So it's amazing. I think as we look at more deployments, Sujat, a question to you in terms of especially with AI, the way pace at which AI is changing and the technological innovations leapfrogging. Every 6 months we hear new things coming up in terms of capabilities or models. What architectural choices today will determine that AI-enabled networks remain interoperable and adaptable in the long run? So what choices do we need to keep in mind today to make sure that AI is not moving us back into a setup where we are having to rewire things because the technologies move faster than we could readjust the model around the technology?
Absolutely, great question there, Savita. So fundamentally, I think if you look at open networks,
Your mic is not on.
This should be good. Thank you. Thanks, Amina. So yeah, a great question, Savita. I think open network fundamentally is a architecture, a design. It's based on a protocol, as we spoke about, backend. But what's important about that architecture? It's very, very important that we recognize that it's totally decentralized. It means it has no database. There's no central storage of data. The value doesn't get stored or captured. It's always flowing, peer-to-peer, end-to-end, from the logistic provider to the shopkeeper, or from shopkeeper to the consumer. That's what it allows. It always allows the flow of value to happen. And every time the flow of value happens, the value is always at the edges. So if I, as a consumer, am making an order through a network like Indonesia Open Network, and placing an order on a shopkeeper, we both keep a copy. There's nothing in the center. Now, this is very, very important to understand to answer your question, because on this architecture, we are naturally building a certain amount of safeguard for any sort of concentration and capture or a capture of value at the center. And with the way the AI is emerging, there could be potential tendencies of that when you deploy AI. But which is very important. It's AI, for us, it's about diffusion. It's making the AI models go where the data is, because there's literally no central database from which you can say, okay, why don't you give me all the data and I'll give you better inferences. That's not how it's going to work. It's actually going to move at the edges. What it does, and this is very important, what open networks fundamentally do, it has reduced the cost of formalization or onboarding into a formal, recognized network where you are actually, you identify yourself formally and declare who you are. It reduces the cost of discovery. It reduces the cost of contracting, transaction, and fulfillment. This is a very, very fundamental cost we're talking about. And in that process, you're rapidly declining the cost of trust. If you're doing that, on ONDC today, we do literally 7 orders per second. And the reason why the volume is growing is because the significant cost of trust that has gone down for a shopkeeper to make that transaction. And it also reduces the cost of transactions, so much so that on the network today in India, we are offering a 100 rupee mutual fund that's like literally $1 mutual fund to farmers, to auto rickshaw drivers, because it's not just about credit, they should also participate in the upside of capital markets. So the driving inclusion has those sort of opportunities. In doing so, what you're trying to do is that we are not looking at a capture with any form of that sort of tendency of AI, but leveraging AI to make sure it goes and works for the people who have their data and unlock agency for them. And that's where, in many of the conversations that I'm seeing, and I've been part of at least 5 networks that I've witnessed, AI's biggest value in open networks has been to reduce the complexity of a shopkeeper. And I'm kidding you not. I mean, I would encourage all of you to see some of the demos we're talking about, whether it's in the Google booth or in the ONDC booth or even the India Energy Stack. We had a farmer show it to the Prime Minister in literally 3 voice notes on a WhatsApp. He has no energy literacy. He doesn't know the difference between kilowatt and kilowatt hour, clearly. Even I took a while. I mean, of course, I'm an engineer, but it's not something that I naturally think about. Without that, he said, can I earn more tomorrow? Because I'm not going to be at home. I'm going to be in the market. and coming back in the evening, can I earn more? That is where AI is being valued and it's creating the safeguards. And the last point here, open networks as a network and not a platform, because there's no central platform, it's very, very important. You're moving the discussion of safeguards and governance to the flows, not so much as a platform. It's very important to understand that we are governing the flows, not governing the infrastructure, which means, for example, if you're doing a banking transaction, it's like internet. You don't have to talk to Internet Federation to implement internet banking transactions. You have the local bank, central bank, RBI doing it for you. Similarly on open networks, you only focus on the flows that needs to be governed and regulated, and it can imbibe the existing norms and laws, and we are making sure that are programmatically introduced. So these are the ways in which I think the marginal cost of adoption of AI will also rapidly collapse while offering the safeguards.
Fantastic, thank you. You brought about governance, and that leads me to my next question to Sachin, and we'll try and keep it short because I'm getting multiple, stares from people because you're almost on time. Sachin, very quickly, what kind of policy shifts do you think will be needed to drive more adoption, more diffusion of open networks with AI as the amplifier, AI as the driver for more adoption?
Yeah, I think the governments should really look at the opportunity ahead of them, and then base policy on that. This is really a very simple thing. It's power to the bottom of the pyramid. And at the bottom of the pyramid, you have a huge, maybe 70% of the population is there. Imagine empowering them and what it can do to the economy, what it can do for GDP growth, what it can do for, livelihoods. And I think when a government, which is always elected in power, realizes that here is a tool which is going to help them look good, because a good regulation and that enables people, creates jobs, puts food on the table, is good for the government and the political parties. So I think policies should be, or regulations should be driven by being able to meet up to the election promises they have made. I think finally there is a tool that allows you to be able to show visible benefits for the people. We always talk about benefiting corporations and large organizations, but what can you do for the people? This is it. Open networks give you that opportunity, and I think therein lies the answer of what kind of policy and regulation should be made that truly enables people at the bottom of the pyramid to contribute and make a significant change to the economy of a nation.
Thank you, Sachin. I think there's a longer discussion that can be had on policy and role of government and the governance of these kind of infrastructures in the country, but that's for another panel.
Yeah.
We're almost at closing. We're going to take a quick 30-second each kind of round, and just want to ask, what do you hope to see in the next 12 months in the space of open networks, AI, from a lens of improving impact outcomes? We are talking about AI. Shamina mentioned it is only useful if it helps the people for which you're doing something. So just quick 30-second reflections as we close. Whoever wants to go first, no specific order.
Formal, sustainable, okay, there you go. So formal, sustainable livelihoods for millions and millions of people, and offering them new opportunities. That was otherwise unthinkable. I think, of course, we all know digitization can and solve for inclusion, but when done in the right way, it can really amplify. With AI, I think we can amplify further. And I think AI and open networks as a way to diffuse that potential to people and raise livelihoods standards across the world and give them more income, putting more income in the hands of people would be one of the things that I would look for. And that's exactly why we've designed this concept of open networks. And with AI, we're only amplifying that possibility.
I think we talked about governments and the role of governance and public sector. I actually think that private sector has an outsized role to play here in a way that we haven't played before. And so getting it right in the private sector is, I think, something that we should be really focused on. So for our part, not only did we make the pledge 11 years ago to bring 1 billion people into the formal economy, we met that pledge in 2025. We've re-upped, and now we have said we're bringing 500 million people and small businesses. We're going to connect them into the formal economy and protect them in the formal economy on their path to financial health by 2030. So we've moved from inclusion to access to usage to security to health. That's the recognition that AI will bring, will speed up this process.
Fantastic.
So I'd like to actually see, this young people, the millennials and Gen Zs of the world, be inspired to stay where they are and not have to move to a big city just because, opportunity lies there. If I can see that they stay in their towns, they stay in the villages and get into digital, that's going to be a huge motivation for them to build the economy around the local areas. And I think what we are doing, Open Networks, gives them that opportunity. And it creates so many new digital and technology jobs that are savvy, that's, it's trending. And social media can encourage them to go and become the little digital entrepreneur in their little town and village and build from, inside up. So I really am looking forward to seeing that phenomenon take place so that we are able to train them, skill them, allow them to build digital economies just around them.
Fantastic. That was an amazing, amazing discussion. Very, very enriching. Thank you, Shamina, Sujit, and Sachin for a lovely panel. Thank you, audience, for being patient. I don't think we have time for Q&A, but if you have any questions, we can do. Okay, I think we have time for one question. Yeah?
Yes.
Actually, I've been with Niti Aayog and rural development, and one of the major challenge, sir has been a speaker in one of our seminar also. So my question is that we have a very nice open network, but the problem is that the big giants like Amazon, Flipkart, they overshadow. So what would be the strategy to tackle this? Because like ONDC, I've been closely working, but the problem is that when I talk to the people on the other side who are using the technology, they say that they prefer that because इसमें responses बहुत slow आते हैं, मेरा बिक्री नहीं होता. So what do you suggest to tackle that? Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Sachin, Sujit, Koshi sir.
Maybe Koshi, if you allow me. No, the great point. Firstly, I think there's often and always a comparison between what open networks are doing and the likes of Amazon. I don't think it's either versus or. I think that's probably a perception that I think that's been built in. ONDC's primary purpose, as my understanding, open networks is to drive penetration, access to digital markets. Because even with big platforms, we're talking about under 8% e-commerce penetration in the country, and with B2B, it's under 1%. So for a country as big as India, it's one thing to say, yes, I get more orders on Amazon. We're talking about very few people getting more orders. Okay, so this is about actual driving penetration to 75 million MSMEs, artisans, 100 million taxi drivers. They all need find a way to do business effective, cheaper, and in a way that also restores their dignity. So I think that's one of the things I wanted to clarify. In terms of open network as an idea, of course it's a very radical thought to think about commerce. In a way, we are thinking about what MasterCard did about moving money. We are talking about moving multiple SKUs, goods and services of all kinds. In ONDC, we are talking about 15 sectors, from mutual funds, credit, commerce, logistics services, mobility, transit, agriculture produce, all of that. Some places it works really well. Some places there are areas where I think that requires a little bit of attention. And most of the work has been to explore what that means. We never expected, even the early e-commerce platforms never really took off the way it works today. It came after 20 years of refining it. We are going through that process. But there's been significant feedback loops and learning. In fact, Backend 2.0 is one of the reasons why we wrote the next version, is actually because of the hard learnings that's come from ONDC, benefiting both ONDC and Indonesia Open Network going forward, is to solve for some of these little frictions. Largely, it's about the mindset. It's a very counterintuitive thought for a platform builder to know that the platform cannot have both the consumer and provider on the same platform. It's just too counterintuitive. The fact that a consumer is on one platform, the provider is on another platform, and the logistic provider is on another platform. How do you solve for that? But in doing that, in a certain way, really accelerates the scale and what expands that adoption. we're doing that very well. So now I think it's a lot of those teething troubles have been resolved. As I said, seven orders a second is not a bad sort of a throughput we're looking at, but we are hoping to increase that to 50 over a period of time, and there are significant improvements on that front happening. But I think the key point here is it's not a platform. It's not an Amazon versus open network conversations. In fact, I don't know if this is formal yet, some of these platforms are actually joining it. Many people thought that ONDC will probably make it competitive with Uber because a lot of transactions initially was from mobility. Uber has officially joined ONDC. It's not either or. Uber has officially joined ONDC because they think with ONDC, they can actually offer multimodal mobility in the country that was otherwise broken for a long time. So this way of thinking requires everybody to orchestrate and do well. Everybody has to do their part very well. And sometimes in the early stages, all these platforms having that sort of harmonious coordination takes a little bit of time, but we are fixing that quite rapidly. Yeah. In case you want to add.
I won't take much time, Sujit gave the big picture well. Because what we are creating is a network, not a platform. In network, some nodes will do well, some nodes will not do. Collectively, network grow. And that's what we are seeing. But one more important thing that we remember, she was asking from Niti Aayog, saying, what more can you do? It has to become a movement. That is the reason that if you look at Sujit, Sachin explained, saying that when we were discussing with the team there, they said the only way it can accelerate is when it becomes a national movement. And that is something that we hope will build up here. And that is being taken as the first challenge in the Indonesia Open Network. Thank you.
I'll just add a small point here. We should stop comparing it to that, do I buy on Amazon or do I buy on ONDC? Because that is us. We're not developing this product for us. We're developing for people who don't have what they actually need. So if you really take us away from this equation, it's really benefiting a lot of people. And we are not the benchmark. We're not building this network for us. We're building it for those who do not have certain basic functions that an open network can give. And if you really look at those segments, and what Koshi and Sujit were saying is, it has really impacted lives. And that's the takeaway we should say, how can we amplify those mechanisms and take it elsewhere and amplify the impact of that?
Yeah. Just a quick quiz question. How many of you know what's the cost of a business delivering a ride on ride hailing is? If you were to look at the numbers of all the big platforms, and one of the things that was born on open networks like Namayatri, the cost differentials are 10 times. There's a network that delivers a ride. The total cost of businessing, marketing, driver, retaining, consumer onboarding, all of that, the cost of that is just 4 rupees per ride. Never done before. It's the world's cheapest ride-hailing infrastructure, and $250 million of money has gone to the drivers with no commission taken. There's nobody in the center taking commissions. So we're talking about doing things. Some of these takes time to build, but we're already seeing enough green shoots for us to really scale well and fast. Yeah.
Thank you, everyone. I think we are at time. I heard the buzzer twice. So thank you, everyone. Thank you to our esteemed panelists. Thank you, Koshi sir.